and using the restroom in the truck. In the truck, I don't know. I don't have any advice about using the restroom inside of your truck. Okay, I'm going to try and attempt to use this microphone. Now, I know it's a little bit funny acting. I'm praying that it works out. But anywho, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. You guys know I'm in an apartment right now, so I'm actually trying to avoid the background noise that you may hear because I have people upstairs and downstairs that are making a little bit of noise. But anywho, I did a poll, or not necessarily a poll, but I asked you guys to ask me advice questions so that I could do this video both on Instagram and on YouTube. And some of you guys asked questions that weren't necessarily advice questions. I'm probably gonna save those for more of like a Q&A because I get it. Like, you know, I don't do Q&As often. So I'm probably going to save some of those for that. So if you don't see that your question has been answered, just, you know, wait a little bit. And also, there were a lot of questions, so I may not have gotten to every single question. I will say that some of these questions I'll be paraphrasing in a way, simply because I've noticed that a lot of these questions were asked repeatedly, but in different ways, and sometimes with like an additional aspect of the question. So I'm gonna like try to put them all together, if that makes sense. I'm gonna also try to be as quick as possible because there are still a nice amount of questions, and I feel like my answers tend to be a little meaty based off, you know, me trying to answer them the best way I can. So I'm not going to take too long with this intro. I'm going to get started. I have them on my phone right here. I'm not going to necessarily be like shouting out everybody, but I will shout this person out, not for any particular reason other than they gave me bullet points on multiple questions. And so I feel like it's obvious who I'm answering right now anyway. But Ashley Sapphire, she asked probably about 5 questions, and I'm going to try to go through them really quickly. One of them is, while honoring your faith journey, how do you communicate your values or set boundaries for yourself when dating? It really just comes down to the initial meeting. As far as like, obviously when you guys first meet, I feel like that's where you need to be the most honest and most upfront about what you're looking for, what you are willing to do, what you're not willing to do, things like that. And so I feel like setting boundaries in the beginning is the most important. It's really hard to set boundaries later, but I still feel like if you feel like you need to set a boundary, as soon as possible is my best answer. Also, a good option would be to make sure that you are meeting up with someone who is like-minded and what they want, what they believe, things like that. Like that's like really important. Question number 2, ways to keep yourself content or busy while being single/living alone. I feel like I've gotten this question multiple times, so I'm going to try to answer it all together in saying that one of the biggest things that I believe my father taught me, my dad, is how to be happy by yourself. And as broad as that may sound, you know, I grew up by myself as a only child. Technically, I do have siblings, but I grew up by myself, and then I grew up in my dad's house, so it was just me and him for a lot of the time. And during that time, I think I really got content with that alone time initially. And now that I am in a position and was in a position where I wasn't dating, now I'm dating, but when I was in a position when I wasn't dating, I think one of the biggest things for me was that I was still intentional about making sure that I could do that on my own. And what that looked like to me was, I mean, obviously I found things that I enjoyed to do without necessarily having other people around. But also I practiced being alone. I practiced going out alone. I practiced not necessarily being on the phone for a large portion of time. It wasn't hard, I will admit, just being the only child. Essentially, it was easy to adapt to that. My advice would be to practice being alone and practice finding things that you enjoy about yourself. Learn about yourself. Take the time to be in therapy. Use that time to grow in your spiritual wellness, as far as, praying, getting into Bible study. I think the best thing that I can say is when you do end up dating, I think it's far more easy to learn how to invite someone into your space versus learning how to enjoy being alone. I think we have to be more content being in our own space first before being more content being around others. So, I hope that answers your question. I could get into it a lot deeper in a future video if you'd like, but that's a really deep question, honestly, in my opinion. She also said tips on how to break out of your comfort zone. Breaking out of your comfort zone. I'm still working on that. I won't act like I'm an expert in that area, but one thing I will say is you don't have to do it all at once. I do understand some people, they thrive on just doing it, and I do think that that's important in some aspects, but a lot of times you can just ease into things. So if you're not someone who likes to hike, like that to you is frightening, for example, well, then start off walking around your neighborhood. I don't think a lot of people do that. I don't do it. And I think that there's even a level of anxiety that someone would have with walking around their neighborhood for certain reasons. So I would take that as a baby step and then use that as momentum. Then before you know it, probably walking around, say, a mall or something, or working out by getting on a treadmill at a Planet Fitness or whatever. But I'm just saying, like, in other words, I'm saying take the necessary steps to get to that point to where you feel more comfortable getting out of your comfort zone, if that makes sense. Take baby steps. It's you don't have to jump all the time. Some things do require, but say, for example, if you are uncomfortable with getting on live, well, then do mock lives where you are recording yourself as if you are going live, and don't edit yourself and then post that. That's like a mock live. You get what I mean? You can ease into it. That's what I would say. Do you stand hard on your goals or give yourself grace? For example, owning a home by 30, being married by a certain age, saving money by a certain date, etc. In this area, I think the healthiest way is to have like a balance. I believe in having grace for yourself 100%, because if you're following God, you don't have all the answers. You have an idea. You don't necessarily know the time frame. You might have an idea of what you would want for the time frame to look like, but I think when it comes to that, sometimes you're influenced by what society might say is the accurate time frame for you, but God knows way more than you or anyone around you. So I would say in that area, grace is extremely important. However, I do also feel that you can be too content in letting things just happen, flying by the seat of your own pants. So you still need to take initiative. I've definitely tried to find my groove in the in-between, where I'm taking initiative in areas that I can control. In areas that I cannot control, I leave it to God, and I make sure that I'm close to Him in prayer and Bible study, and just in general, that when I feel like I need guidance, I lean and make sure that I'm going in the right direction. Since you've grown so much, do your dreads have a different meaning or significance to you now? No. I think I like them the same way I did. There are some days, however, where I'm sort of like, I want something different. And that's normally when I haven't retwisted them in a while, or when I dye them a color that's a little against what I was looking for, or just things like that where I go through ebbs and flows. But the significance behind them, I feel, still holds to be the same as before. And at the end of the day, I didn't have much reason outside of the functionality over the road when I was driving, how easy it would have been to manage my hair if I didn't have to, slick it back, do all this, extravagant stuff on the road. It says, "Hey Nish, I'm a on the road trucker from Philly. I'm thinking about getting my tanker and going local. Do you think that's a good idea? Philly scares me because of the low bridges." Hi, I for one can't be too sure, being that I don't live in Philly, so I can't 100% say this is a great idea or this is a poor idea. What I will say is to get your endorsements does broaden your opportunities. I don't think that in itself is a bad idea. My experience lately in the trucking profession regarding local, I've noticed that the inflation and just the economy right now has played a part in some things being not as stable as they used to. For example, with where I work at now, sometimes the hours can be like flip-floppy. Sometimes I end up with days off that I wouldn't normally have off. And I know for some people that can be a struggle. For me, it's a struggle. But I also know that certain jobs end up with certain low points. So I'm not going to say don't get into trucking based off that. I will say be mindful that local, especially, you may have some issues with instability for the moment. But I know that if you're planning on getting your endorsement, you sort of leave room for other opportunities that you may not have if you didn't have that endorsement. So I would, from a person who isn't currently living in Philly, I would say that's not a bad idea. I would be sure that you're willing to roll with the punches if things still aren't as smooth as you may think they should be. Another question says, now that you've done local, regional, and over the road, which can you say you like the most? Number one, financially / benefit wise. Number two, job wise. And number three, work / life balance wise. When it just comes to enjoyability, because I know that's not necessarily what you're saying, but I'm going to speak off that. I will say that on the road was probably my most enjoyable experience with trucking. I also know that that had a lot to do with my age too. I was very sheltered prior to doing that. So that was like going from being in the dark to being in the light. And then obviously I was growing in my relationship with God. So that was just a huge experience for me. I was truly enjoying that. However, financial wise, I would say on the road was also best for me, being that I wasn't home to spend as much money. So I was stacking. Work-life balance wise, I would say local, hands down. I'm able to come home every day. That is a level of stability that over the road and regional cannot, unfortunately, offer many people. I am very content with no longer taking a shower in a truck stop. I think I've gotten to the point and the age where I like the feminine aspect of taking my own shower or taking a bath if I want to, or not having to wear shower shoes or being afraid of touching certain surfaces. So I would say local for my age and where I'm at right now in life is the most beneficial, but enjoyability, I would say over the road. Regional was that in between that I feel like I needed for the time being, and I still see myself, if need be, say if local wasn't financially covering me like I needed to, I do still see myself transitioning to regional temporarily, but that would be on a need basis. Another question says, how to grow on YouTube. There's so many ways to answer that, but I would say from a mindset point of view, just be consistent. Make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons. Don't necessarily be motivated by the money aspect because that fluctuates heavily. Don't also be discouraged by the money because it fluctuates and it doesn't necessarily determine whether or not your videos will take off later versus initially. I would say, as far as your content, make sure that it is helpful. Even if it's not, just make sure in some way, shape, or form it's beneficial to people. It might just be a source of entertainment, but offer something, because that will, in the least, guarantee that you will have a loyal following. If you aren't, it's probably going to be harder. Sometimes that just means a way to open the door for people to see your life in order to inspire them to do certain things. Or that means, being funny or whatever. But just make sure you're offering something. And then lastly, this is more tailored to people who believe what I believe. Make sure God is behind it. That's the telltale sign that it's going to, if not initially, eventually succeed. And it may not look like the success you're looking for, but if God's behind it, it will not falter. You can make it falter necessarily if you are screwing up, but that's another conversation. Just, make sure God's behind it. It says, women are getting their CDL licenses more and more. How would you explain to young women who think it's a man's job or not a job for women in your own perspective? Did your parents support you in your decision? I want to say that the question is ultimately asking, how would I encourage young women, knowing that it's a male-dominated profession? And I would say that my biggest way has been by making videos, because I think if you can see it, then you can believe it type thing. That's really been my whole point of being on YouTube. I will say that other than that, the encouragement I would lean towards is, if you have 2 hands and 2 feet, a lot of times that means you're capable as well. I don't think a penis does much to make you better at driving a truck. But I also understand that you will run into certain scenarios that are significant to you being a woman. And I would just say you're going to run into that in any profession. I don't think that that's significant to trucking. We tweak in a lot of professions. So I would say just make sure that you understand there is no exception in trucking. And then, how did my parents support me in my decision? Yes, both of them were heavily supportive, more supportive than I really even thought, and I'm so blessed for that. To this day. Another question is, well, not a question, but it says, I need advice on how to be more patient. I think I had another question as well that pretty much asks the same thing, which is, they said, advice for being patient and keeping good faith. Also, advice for anyone who is seeking spiritual guidance. Where do you start? So I'm going to answer both in tandem. When it comes to patience and faith, I would say, you know how when people are like, don't pray for God to make you stronger, or don't pray for God to give you more patience, because you will be put in situations where God will intentionally make you stronger. Sometimes it'll be hardships, things like that. Well, I would say within that mindset, understand that despite you not praying for those things, you are currently, or eventually, or have previously, will be going through scenarios, trials, tribulations that God is attempting to use to increase on your patience, on your faith, on your strength, things like that. So I would say be aware of what trial you're in and what it could do for your patience in that specific scenario. For example, if you are currently going through a moment where you're waiting on something, say you're waiting on an increase of your finances. If you are waiting on that and you're struggling to be patient and you're praying for patience, you're in a very specific scenario where God is strengthening your patience. So accept that because you are in the waiting. Accept that you are being strengthened in your patience in this very moment, and then allow for this moment to increase your patience. So accept and then allow. And I would say most times than not, you are currently in that situation, and that's why you're praying for it. So utilize it. Take it as a blessing. He is increasing on your patience and your faith. Advice for anyone who is seeking spiritual guidance: where do you start? That's a loaded question. When I think of spiritual guidance, I think of the Holy Spirit. And if you're seeking spiritual guidance, I know that it's a struggle to hear, we'll just read the Bible. I know it's a struggle to hear, we'll just pray for it. Things like that. I'm not going to say that those actions in itself will, I'm trying not to preach being legalistic or being religious, like hyper religious. What I'm trying to say is by doing those things, you are in a way drawing near to God, because those are ways to draw near to God, right? And being that God, if you believe in the Trinity, God is also Holy Spirit. Well, the way to seek spiritual guidance is by drawing close to your spiritual guider, which is Holy Spirit, right? So pray, read the Bible, and you can also, in a way, look for mentors in church or people who you believe uphold a level of wisdom. That, to me, is the best way to accurately seek spiritual guidance. I don't know too many other ways that will give you the accurate spiritual guidance you're looking for. It's tough too, because sometimes when you're in a rut, it's hard to read the Bible and to glean it for what you know is in it. You might have like a few blocks in your heart. So I would say pray for a soft heart while you're doing these things, that God softens your heart, that you can draw near to Him. Have there been any moments during trucking that made you want to quit driving? Yes, I could go through them all day. I will, however, just say I have plenty story times on YouTube that you might have seen already. Those are examples of plenty experiences that I've had that made me want to, if not want to, probably I thought about it, quit trucking. Most recently, however, is the instability in my current position in local. It says, if you could talk to 2018/2019 Nisha today, would you give her the advice to get her CDL? Would you still want to continue trucking today if you didn't have the companion YouTube channel? Do you have any regrets about creating the YouTube channel now that you are in a new season of life? I'm interested in your perspective now that you are a silver play button journeywoman trucker. Thanks. Wow. That is a great question that's loaded. I'm going to try my best to answer it accurately and say that in this year and 2023 alone, I have experienced more hardship in trucking than I've ever had. And a lot of that has to do with what I just spoke on. I know that I'm going to sit down and talk about this more in a future video, but I know that I don't have all of the things or points that I want to speak on currently to be able to do that. But I will say that if I could look back and speak to prior to trucking Nisha, I don't think that I would tell her to do many things differently. I would probably add to it and be like, listen, girl, yeah, you go through trucking, right? But if you want to improve on what you're already going to do, probably make sure you don't want to finish college. Like, just make sure you don't. I definitely am in that position right now where there's my girls know it's very easy to be like, I'm going back to school, right? Especially when you're like feeling like I can do it. I'm very confident that I could get it done, and I'm nothing like that is beneath me. But then you think about how much money you're going to spend getting back into school, or just all the hardships that come alongside of it. I don't know. I'm still in that limbo where today I'm still wondering if I should be doing more than what I'm doing right now. I know a lot of people can relate to that, and so I can't accurately give her advice right now. I do feel strongly that I'm supposed to be waiting right now until things make more sense. So that's a loaded question. That's a great question. And it also says, do you have any regrets about creating the YouTube channel now that you are in a new season of life? YouTube right now, I feel very reluctant to be as open, only because there are things right now that I feel it is unwise to speak heavily on in order to protect a lot. I have a lot of new things going on right now that are personal. So it's one of those things where I'm trying to be wise, but that does mean I'm very select on what I am open about. And in the past, I've been more open. So it does feel like I am struggling to figure out exactly what to provide as content on YouTube. Even with vlogs, I feel like I cut a lot out because it's like, not right now. You know, I feel guided to be more just momentarily select, right? So I won't say that I regret by any means. No, I knew I was supposed to do it, and I'm very blessed to have been able to do it. It's not necessarily a job for me as much as it's an avenue, like I don't know, like it's sometimes an avenue for me to spread the gospel. Sometimes it's an avenue for me to make side money, but overall it's an avenue for community and an open space for me to do whatever I believe God is telling me to do for that moment, right? So I don't regret it. I definitely feel like this season is just tough in every aspect of my life, as well as a lot of people's right now, but it's still something that I can be content in for the moment. What's been your journey with creating an ebook, and is it able to produce decent revenue? Safe travels. Thank you. I have not created more than the initial ebook that I created, which was it was a guide to new truckers, which is still on every video that I've posted. It's under every video, and it is free. I made it free because I think, and it's this probably just my thinking, I've always sort of believed that if I had a resource that I knew would help someone, that I felt was a need for some people, that I wouldn't make someone pay for it. If it was a want, if it was something that was just a casual want, not a need, then you gonna pay for it. So if I made t-shirts, for example, they're not gonna be free. But if I have a resource that I feel will truly help you in your walk in any regard, I'm probably not gonna make someone pay for it. I don't think that that's Bible by any means. It's just sort of how I've decided to do things. So that's why it's free. And so that means, no, I did not get any revenue from it and don't plan to. I think, however, I have sort of felt the nudge lately to write something else, and I don't necessarily know much more than that. But I do feel that that's somewhat of a calling for me to write, but I'll leave that there because I'm still sort of getting an understanding of that. Another question says, are you a born again believer or were you raised Christian? I know you've only mentioned God and faith a few times, but I'd love to know more about your relationship with him. You glow. Thank you. I am so happy that I glow. I feel like that is a beautiful compliment. Thank you. But it says, are you a born again believer or were you raised Christian? I was raised Christian. I was saved in 2019. That's the gist of it, pretty much. Okay, I have a question that says, are you gonna give up trucking once you hit 200 subscribers? Be honest. I am not necessarily, like, I can't for sure say whether or not I'm going to give up trucking dependent on anything, but I will say that it's likely not dependent on the number of subscribers that I obtain. Nothing has really been dependent on that. I also feel like trucking right now is it's just, I don't know. I'll talk about it later in another video. But I enjoy trucking. I don't see myself giving it up because of anything going on YouTube. I see myself giving up YouTube if something in my life calls for me to. Say, for example, kids, right? Probably not going to be over the road 48 states if I have children at home. When to let go and when to keep trying for any situation? That's a good question. I honestly feel like I'm going to speak on this specifically because I've recently had this type of situation for myself. I noticed that sometimes when you feel that there's a situation that you either need to let go or need to, work hard at keeping it, you have like this feeling in you that sometimes feels like anxiety, sometimes feels like worry. Certain moments may cause you to have like a drop in your stomach, like, oh my gosh, or at the end of the day, you're ignoring the feeling, but it's like something that you can't fully shake. And I noticed that in those moments, my go-to is to decide, okay, I need a minute. And what that looks like is I'll typically take like a week. I'll cut off all distractions that I feel keep me from really focusing on the issue. And then I take that issue to God. I'm praying. I'm being very open in that moment. This is my situation. This is how I feel. I'm acknowledging what I've been ignoring the whole time. So say, for example, if I'm wondering if I should stay at a job or if I should let go and go to something else, if I'm not necessarily acknowledging that, I will take that week to fully acknowledge every single feeling that I've been feeling, give that to God. I notice that the first 2 days are the rough days for me because I'm oftentimes just, releasing all of my feelings. And then within those days, I'm praying and I'm asking for guidance. So it's essentially like a fast. And by the end of that week, I most times did not feel a very, very overwhelming amount of peace. And I think that has gotten me through those tough limbo moments where it's like, do I do this or do I do that? So I would say if you're going through that, my advice to you would be to take a week or maybe just an amount of time that makes sense to you and cut out distractions and stop ignoring that you have something warring going on with you, and take it to God. And I am very sure that you will feel peace by the end of it and likely have an answer. I have a question that says, do you think love is real? What do you think about love? Is love unconditional? This isn't quite an advice question, but I decided to leave it in. I will say that God is love. That I believe 100%, specifically because all love derives from him. there was no love before him. There is no before him. You know what I mean? So love comes from him. So God is love, right? I do, however, feel that when we say love, we typically don't mean love. I feel like we aren't necessarily feeling love until we decide we're in love. And I know in love sounds like it's more relational, like for a partnership between man and woman, but you can be in love with your parents. You can be in love with your animal. It doesn't have to be your partner, your boyfriend or your husband or wife, girlfriend, things like that. So, when I think of love, I think of that feeling when you decide that this person or this thing or whatever has made an imprint on my life to the extent that I have changed or am willing to change, grow, or am inspired to the extent of growth for that being. I don't feel that when the word love is thrown out, that always means that. I do notice that in love is typically the initial start of what I believe love actually is for a lot of people. I hope that makes sense, because at the end of the day, what I feel we mean often when we say, oh, I love that, or I love her, or I love this, I think we're oftentimes expressing a likeness, like we like this thing, or we're intrigued by it, interested, inspired, lusting after it. We don't often really mean love. And so, is love unconditional? I do think love is unconditional. I think you actually have to love that thing for it to be unconditional. If you're just loving the way that we use the word love, then you can tell it probably isn't love if it isn't unconditional. But that is my opinion. Any advice on trucking while on your time of your cycle and using the restroom in the truck? In the truck? I don't know. I don't have any advice about using the restroom inside of your truck. I have a video out that I can put in my description box that I went in depth on how to work alongside your cycle while over the road. I will leave that in my description box for you. So I am going to try to answer this question as briefly and as accurately as possible, because I received multiple threads of the extent of this question, if that makes sense. But I'll paraphrase it, and this person is technically asking, they're saying that they've been team driving and they find it hard to work out, and so they're asking for tips on how to work out, being that when they're driving they obviously can't work out, but then when they're not driving, their team member is driving, and so it's really hard to work out while the truck is moving. And then obviously in the times that they do stop, they find it hard to decide to work out because like you'd be out in public, etc., things like that. And I would say that you're gonna have to find some bed workouts. That's what I did, and I did have a lot more space while I was on the road, being that I was by myself. But that did not mean that I did not utilize my bed. I do know it'll be a little more difficult because the truck will be moving, but that does not mean that it's impossible. What I will say is, being that you will be doing bed workouts, specifically workouts where you have limited space and won't be able to utilize the momentum of your full body weight, I will say you probably need to increase your workouts and decide that it will be a daily workout versus I'll work out 3 times a week. And then utilize those times when you're off to still work out within the truck. Probably, if you have enough space, bring a little stepper. I know it's been going wild on TikTok lately. I have used that stepper back 2021 maybe when I was over the road. I'll put it in the description box. But yes, find bed workouts. There's plenty circuits on YouTube. find those, do those. What I did was I chose 5 workouts. So if that meant crunches, bicycle kick thingy, bicycle crunches, the Russian twist, 2 other workouts, I would do 5 of those, 3 reps, 5 sets, right? Is that how you say it? So all of those workouts, I would do 3 of each. So I would do 3 sets of, I don't know if I'm using the right verbiage. I'm so sorry. If I was doing crunches, I would do crunches first, and I would do that 3 times. So I'd probably do 10 crunches 3 times. So that'd be 30 crunches. Then I turn around, do Russian twists. I probably do 10 twists, so 5 on each side, 3 times, right? And then, and that would be my workout for the day. It's possible, even if the truck is moving, to do 5 workouts. It takes probably about an hour. You can get it done and then go straight to sleep. Okay, I've also had a lot of questions asking about Pepper, and since she's in my face right now, she's doing fairly fine. She has she's doing great. She's spoiled like normal. She's in my face. The only real reason why you guys don't see her often is because, I have multiple reasons, but the biggest reason is that she looks homeless after about 3 weeks of not being cut. And I get her cut every 6 weeks or so. So it wouldn't matter if she just got cut. Her hair type is sort of like shaggy. I don't necessarily know why. It wouldn't matter if I brushed her 3 times a day. She just looks shaggy. And I have received certain comments for, I would say, 2 years straight, where people sometimes feel like there's abuse going on. Nothing has necessarily been according to how she looks, but just in general, people have opinions about things. It's understandable, but it's often false because you're seeing like a snippet of something. And so, like, for example, she's stop poop. She's been in her playpen at some point. If you see her in her playpen for like 2 minutes within the video, sometimes I'll get a comment that'll say, if you're gonna keep her in her playpen, then you might as well not have her. And it's like, hold on. Hold on. That does not mean abuse. Hold on now. Like, she's perfectly fine, and she's just on a schedule. So I will say this: what I've had to do recently to make sure that she's on an accurate schedule is, when she's about to be walked, I make sure she eats. I take her outside. If she did not go number 2, she goes in the playpen, specifically because I cannot risk letting her walk free within my home if she did not poop outside, because chances are she's going to find a reason to poop within my home. She's done so on multiple occasions. She's also a feisty dog. There has been a point in time where she has waited until it was time to go to bed. She would get up into my bed, poop on my pillow while I'm laying on it. Will that happen again? The answer is no. So she has a playpen, not a crate, a playpen for when she does not poop outside. I got a question that says, I just started recording content for my trucking content. Any advice for us shy ones? Congrats. I will say that I'm shy too. I don't like recording in public. It's not fun for me. It's never been fun. It does not get easier for me. It has been made easier in time for a lot of other people. I am just one of those people where it feels uncomfortable every time. What I have done to combat that is I got a small compact camera. I've had a recent video probably about 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, maybe 5 even, where I utilized the camera for the first time within the blog. I'll leave the blog up on the screen and in the description box. But if you go and watch it, there are points within a video where you can see the quality of the camera. And then by the end of it, I give a review of the camera. I'm currently on the camera and I'm using its microphone that it came with. And it is so compact and small that most people don't even recognize it's a camera. And so that has helped me a lot with my shyness because I feel more comfortable recording in areas that I wouldn't otherwise pull out my phone because I was using my phone before. So yeah, I have a question that says, I will be doing a message on holding on to God. Any scriptures you recommend to drive the point? In my mind, specifically because I've been studying the book of Job recently, I will say that I don't necessarily have a scripture in mind as much as I believe the book of Job holds a lot of very relatable verses for what it may feel like to be in a position where you don't want to hold on to God, when you're upset, when you're not feeling your best based on circumstances, whatever. I know that Job went through it, and despite seeing the spirit backing of what was happening, still really hard to see him go through that. But when you see what God does, when you see the ways in which Job positioned himself despite the circumstances, even when he was upset, still being honest about how he felt, it reminds me that it is okay to be upset and still hold on to God. It's okay to feel that it is unfair and still hold on to God. And there is a comfort in knowing that nothing that happens to you is outside of the scope of God's hand. You are not going to go through a trial that has not been, despite God not necessarily sending it your way, He allowed it for your benefit. You are going to come out a better person if you allow God to lead you through it. So Job is a beautiful, hard book of the Bible that I would say I would lean a little bit into if you're going to try to drive that point home. And with that, being that this video I hope isn't too long, but it seems to be a little long based on what I'm looking at right now. If you guys have any extensions of the advice that I've given and you would like to share them, put them in the comments for the people who did ask these questions, because I know it'll probably help. I don't know everything, but I did want to offer this video if you wanted an alternate perspective for whatever you're currently going through, or if you were just nosy and wanted to see my point of view. So I'm gonna leave that there. I really do appreciate you guys. I love you all, and I will see you in the next video. Bye. Say bye, Poopy. Come here, mamas. Say bye, mamas. All right. You say bye, boo boo.